Mic check. Mic check, 1, 2. Mic check. Mic check, 1, 2. All right, we will be on in just a second. Stay tuned. All right, let's begin. Oh, hold on a second. All right, now we can begin. So let's see, where can I start off? Okay, this live stream right here, 6 minutes into. Okay, so here we are, guys. A couple of topics that we got at hand right now, right? Obviously, the latest announcement with Dana White. Usually, whenever these things happen, right, we wait for hours just to kind of find out what is going on. What are the announcements? Obviously, is it going to be the White House announcement? Is there going to be a specific fight that they're going to announce right now? Well, no, but they are matchmaking for the current moment of time, right? They did say that starting February, they were going to start matchmaking the UFC, right? The UFC Fight Night card. I'm sorry, the UFC White House Fight Night card in specifically, okay? But what they announced instead was ZUFFA Boxing. And it was such a short notice type of fight. It's going to be held on March 8th between Jai Apataya, the current cruiserweight champion of the world, taking on Brandon Glanton, okay, which, by the way, has a very decent record, decent boxer, but not very well known. Okay, now, I know Brandon Glanton had fought previously. He had fought previously at a big card. I believe that was on an Usyk card in London. And I think that he also took on an Englishman. Obviously, Brandon Glanton is from California specifically in, where is he from? Riverside. He's from Riverside. Well, they say that his birthplace, his residence is in Atlanta, Georgia, but I think that's his birthplace, but his residence, I believe, is in where do you call it? In Riverside, California. So, okay, Marcus Brown was his last fight, and that was back in October. But prior to that, he lost to Chris Billum-Smith, okay, Tottenham Stadium. That was April the 25th. So, yeah, I believe that was an Usyk card. Yeah, some sort of big boxing card that he was in under a card with, but he lost that one. And then obviously he came back and had that fight in October 25th. There was a boxing event in Lagos, Nigeria, so he took on Marcus Brown for that one. And yeah, he had won that one. They don't say how. Let's see what is the result of that one. Okay, let's see here. Brandon Glanton. So yeah, not a lot of people are really too excited about this particular boxing fight. But if you're a hardcore boxing fan, I think that you would like it. But look, that's not even the controversy of it all, right? The biggest controversy with this whole thing about Jai Apataya boxing Brandon Glanton is the ZUFFA belt. That's the controversy surrounding all of this. Because most boxers, when they grow up, right, one of the biggest things that they are sort of trying to accomplish is the WBC, the WBO, the IBF, what else? The WBO, WBA, you know, the whole entire belt system, right? This is what they are going for. They're not thinking in their heads that they're going to fight for something like this. You know, this is not what was in their whole entire motivation growing up. Jordy MMA says UFC posted Ank versus Pereira 2. Wow, full fight. Possible Pereira announcement incoming. Well, I tell you what, Jordy MMA, shout out to Jordy MMA. I'm assuming you're probably a Newcastle fan, so let me know if I'm accurate in that assessment of your favorite teams that you might be into in the Premier League. That is if you do watch soccer, but for sure you are a Geordie, like True Geordie, but you are Geordie MMA. So shout outs to Geordie, shout outs to Newcastle. Obviously, I'm a Manchester City guy, right? But at the same time, I do like Newcastle, right? I like that they're owned by the Saudis. That's always good, right? When your team is owned by an Arab oil tycoon, I'm sure there's always going to be some positive benefits to that. So shout outs to True Geordie MMA, not True Geordie, but Geordie MMA. And shout outs to all the Geordies in Newcastle, England, my man. Shout outs to you. Marty, Victory, my moderator, is in the house. Shout outs to you, my man. Good morning to you. Obviously, it's still probably morning time in the part of the world that you are at. So, yeah, man, let's get this thing cracking. You know what I'm saying? Because as soon as I heard the announcement yesterday, I was like, man, I got to go live the next morning to talk about this, because obviously Dana White is now matchmaking. So Jordy asked me here, you know, they're posting the full fight between Ank and Pereira. He is asking if that is indicative of a possible matchmaking that they are going to bring upon in the future, and the answer to that clearly is yes. Primarily because Dana White has announced yesterday that he is going to start building the UFC White House card today. Yesterday and today. So they are working night and day to get this thing cracking. In the meantime, Jai Apataya, right? I really like this signing by ZUFFA Boxing, and I'm going to tell you why, right? Obviously, he's already a household name, at least within Australia, but more importantly, a household name within the world of boxing. So when they are trying to build ZUFFA Boxing, this is a great way to build legitimacy into their brand of boxing, right? And the reason why is because obviously they tried to do that with Conor McGregor during the Floyd Mayweather fight, right? They tried to basically skip all of these shenanigans of trying to build a fighter up. Let's bring Conor McGregor in there and try to knock out Floyd Mayweather so that maybe we can build our brand and build our stable through this particular fight and this particular event, that being the Floyd Mayweather and the Mac card. Well, Jai Apataya obviously is already a stable in the world of boxing, right? So automatically you bring him in, you bring legitimacy in the world of boxing. And then on top of that, you bring legitimacy to this ZUFFA belt. This is what Brandon Glanton and Jai Apataya are going to be fighting for. Okay, now I'm not sure if the belt looks exactly like this. They have not presented a real belt yet. Obviously, this right here is an AI creation, right? Something that's just a bit on the creative front, nothing official to this particular belt. So they are working on basically trying to legitimize the ZUFFA belt, right? And Jai Apataya is already a world champion. So when they add the ZUFFA belt into his collection of belts, what does that do for the ZUFFA belt? It puts the WBC, the WBA, the IBF, the WBO, all in that one particular set of belts as equals. And that is what the UFC is trying to do. Let's take a look at what Jai Apataya's belt, what kind of belts he has, right? So at 30 years old, right now, Jai Apataya is, okay, at 30 years old, and the current belts that he has, okay, so he held the IBF until 2022, until 2023. So what is the belts that he is holding right now? Okay, let's just skip all of this from his Wikipedia and just ask Google. Okay, what are the belts that he has? Belts. So Jai Apataya belts. Okay, so as of February 2026, undefeated Australian boxer Jai Apataya, 29-0, is the reigning IBF and Ring Magazine Cruiserweight champion. Okay, so there you go. He's the IBF Cruiserweight champion right now. So he's not an undisputed champion, nor is he really a unified champion. He is just simply, an IBF champion, but more importantly, a Ring Magazine champion. Because check this out. Guess who owns Ring Magazine? You know who owns Ring Magazine? Turki El-Sheikh, His Excellency, owns Ring Magazine. So they already have a legitimacy through making this fight. Let's read what this says right here. Why Jai Apataya has hit a roadblock with his latest fight announcement. And this is according to the Zone's website right here. So this was written by DAZN, Matt Ashbury, and he says, and I quote, "The IBF Cruiserweight and Ring Magazine champion Jai Apataya has announced his next fight, and his first since signing with Dana's ZUFFA Boxing on March 8th. By the way, that is the date of the fight. Apataya will face Brendan Glanton. Get this, for the inaugural ZUFFA Boxing World Championship title, with no confirmation as to whether the Australian's IBF belt will also be on the line. More than likely it will be on the line, right? Because what if Brendan Glanton is a mandatory? Perhaps the reason why this fight is happening is because he's a mandatory, or maybe Dana White just saw this fight as like, hey, you know what? This is a great way for us to put you in the limelight, get you in there with a tough competitor like Brendan Glanton. Now, look, Brendan Glanton has never been knocked out, okay? So this is what's going to make this fight intriguing with Jai Apataya. Also, another thing that I like about Jai Apataya, right, at least in terms of the UFC's signing, right? So he's Australian, okay, obviously of Samoan, Pacific Islander descent. In fact, Jai Apataya kind of looks like a lot of my homies, in Stockton and across California, on the Samoan Polynesian side of things, right? So he has that going on. He's Australian, and why is that important for a ZUFFA Boxing signing? Well, as soon as he got signed, Volkanovski was right there congratulating him. Hey, Jai Apataya, welcome to ZUFFA Boxing, you bloody cunt. Yeah, we got another Aussie in the house here, yeah. So that's basically what it is, right? He is an Australian fighter, right, in a company where a lot of Australian fighters reap the benefits of superstardom. Okay, so now you got Jai Apataya in there. You can have Israel Adesanya market him. You can have Volkanovski market him, and he already has. Hey, welcome to the ZUFFA family, you bloody cunt. You know what I mean? So he's already done that. Other Australian fighters can welcome him. Dan Hooker, he could go do content, UFC-driven content with Jai Apataya just to build his brand up, right? So this is really good. This is really good for Jai Apataya. Now, the only problem is, will there be any difficulties securing unification fights? And that's what we're going to find out in this article right now, okay? So, Matt Ashbury of DAZN writes, on March 8th, Apataya will face Brendan Glanton for the inaugural ZUFFA Boxing World Cruiserweight title, with no confirmation as to whether the Australian's IBF belt will be on the line. I think we'll find out soon enough, but right now, obviously, there's no confirmation of that, but more than likely it will, because if you are a champion in boxing and anytime you fight, obviously, you are going to... Yes, you are going to have to defend your title, to a certain degree. So, Apataya's decision to join White and ZUFFA raised eyebrows and left plenty of intrigue as to how this move would help Apataya on his quest to unifying all the belts at 200 pounds cruiserweight, considering the promotion's hard stance of not working with the boxing's 4 traditional sanctioning bodies. Okay, let me interject on that for a second, okay? It is not that they are specifically making a hard stance or pushing a hard line to not work with these promotions, right? The traditional sanctioning bodies. Eventually, they're going to have to. What they are trying to do, the UFC or ZUFFA in particular, is they are trying to build the moral high ground. They are trying to say, hey, we have the best promotion in terms of taking care of fighters. By the way, if you are a ZUFFA boxer, you are treated like a UFC fighter, meaning that the PI Center in Las Vegas is absolutely available to you. So those are one of the things that they are going to sort of lure you in to the ZUFFA boxing world. Okay, we have this beautiful facility in Las Vegas. You can come in there, train like Ivan Drago. We'll take your blood. We'll measure your lung capacity. We will measure the attributes and stats that you have going on, and then how to build it up. Some real Ivan Drago training type of stuff, right? Real sports American science at its best, right? That is what you are going to get as a fighter with ZUFFA. And imagine a lot of these boxers, right? Floyd Mayweather, right? He spends a lot of money on recovery. He spends a lot of money on different trainers, nutritionists, and things of that nature. If you are a ZUFFA boxer, you reap the benefits of a UFC fighter that is living in Las Vegas. And in fact, Dana White will even tell you himself, when Francis Ngannou was in the UFC, he literally used that whole entire facility like it was his house. And then, you know, Dana White sort of made a snide remark about, yeah, it's like as if the guy lives there or something. Well, you know, you guys did say that it was offered for free for everyone to use, and he reaped the benefits of it. But in any regard, that is what you get out of that right now. With the sanctioning bodies, I don't think they're opposed to working with them. What I think they are trying to do is, once again, build the moral high ground. Of course, the IBF title could be on the line, possibly, more than likely, highly plausible that it's going to be on the line against Brendan Glanton. However, with that, in addition to that, the ZUFFA belt is going to be raised high. So put it like this, right? IBF belt here on one shoulder, Ring Magazine belt here on the other shoulder, and then what does Jai Apataya do when he wins? He holds up the ZUFFA belt to have the moral high ground of all boxing belts, and that is what they are trying to do. Mbap says, you remember me, brother? Please remind me. Remind me and let me know what part of the world you are from. I know that your name is named after a famous soccer player who plays for PSG, right? The Paris, you know, Saint-Germain, I believe, is the team that you're named after. But yeah, please remind me again who you are, and let me know what part of the world you are from. And now let's continue on with this article. Okay, so following this announcement, this is Matt Ashbury now of The Zone, right? Following the announcement, it is unclear what the future holds for Apataya, one of boxing's most entertaining operators. I agree with that. With his career hitting a roadblock at the worst time possible. Okay, now let's hear why that is. Apataya's difficulty in securing unification fights. Now, after beating Marius Abertis for the second time to become the IBF Cruiserweight Champion 2 years ago, Apataya was boxing's flavor of the month. Okay, a favorite of His Excellency Turki El-Sheikh, a promotional deal with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom. The world was at Apataya's feet. Ah, that's right. Apataya was a Matchroom fighter. So could it be that Eddie Hearn's whole entire bitterness towards Dana White coming into boxing, because remember, Eddie Hearn will tell you he loves Dana White. He is a big fan of Dana White. He looks up to Dana White. That was until Dana White started to decide to step on his toes, at least in the mind of Eddie Hearn. And this is the mind of most boxing guys, right? They are boxing guys who basically, you know, have this attitude that most boxing people have, like, we're going to gatekeep this whole entire industry away from you because we are the top dogs and we don't want anyone there. Okay, Mbap says, I'm from Kurdistan. Oh, that's right. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Because obviously that was the Agate and Kanaiba fight. Yes, that makes sense, right? Because you are a Kurdish man yourself, and obviously you were in support of Agate that night. So yeah, man, it was a great night of boxing. I knew that I had to tap into that, and look what it got me, right? It got me to meet you online, and now you as one of my supporters as a result of that. So it's great. You know, I'm sure there were other Kurdistanis that were also watching, and hopefully they also got to watch the channel as well during that time. So, okay, so a routine defense against Jack Massey shortly followed Jai Apataya, right? Then an entertaining war with David Nika at the start of 2025 resulted in Hearn being bullish. Okay, so the promoter was confident that this man could unify all the belts at cruiserweight and then face the last man to achieve it, Alexander Usyk at heavyweight. So that was the plan that Jai Apataya had with Eddie Hearn, right? Maybe perhaps this is an idea that now Dana White can take and use to catapult Jai Apataya. However, Apataya overcame both Claudio Sin Cara by knockout in his other two outings last year. Like he was stuck in a void. Okay, so speaking after his fight with Sakeo, Apataya was confident that he would secure a date with the WBA and the WBO cruiserweight champion Gilberto Ramirez in a not too distant future. So remember, the WBO and WBA champion right now is Gilberto Ramirez, right? So instead, the Mexican has pursued a different route and will now face the light heavyweight champion David Benavidez in Vegas at the start of May. So there was hope that Zuffa would make a serious statement with Apataya and announce his first fight with the promotion would be a unification fight against WBC title holder Noel Michelanian. But despite the two facing off at Zuffa's debut event last month, nothing appears to be materialized. Okay, so they did have a face-off, but nothing materialized. Mr. Worldwide says, can I ask a question? You just asked the question right now. You're more than welcome to ask another question again. So in his announcement video, Apataya was excited at the prospect of finally unification fights and undisputed fights he craves with Zuffa's backing. But is this possible? Now, Dana White has been very public about his stance that Zuffa is its own entity and playing by its own rules and not working with the four traditional boxing bodies. However, it appears that there may be some wriggle room with Dana White seemingly relaxing his stance for the Stars Names promotion. Okay, so this is Suleiman right here, Mauricio Suleiman. As you guys know, he had a bit of some discussions with Ariel Helwani in his show.
When they announced last year that there was going to be a partnership, the WBC immediately came out and said, welcome to boxing. We hope it is good for the sport. Anything that comes into boxing, we welcome and support. And they have been changing, too aggressive, too, how do you say?
Well, I've heard you say like bullying.
Well, you mean the UFC just acting like the UFC, the way that they treat other MMA promotions, the way that they treat other fighters? Oh, and they come into boxing and people are surprised that this is how they play the game. They play the game aggressive and they play to win.
Bullying.
You've used that term.
Yes, I was mistreated so bad in Las Vegas.
For Canelo Crawford.
For Canelo Crawford.
Tell me how.
Me and the other three organizations, WBO, WBA, IDF, we were not even given a credential. We were told we could not get into the ring. We were not allowed to go into the dressing room. We were not allowed to be at the commission desk. When we go to a fight, we go to work. It is not a vacation or a fun or like a fan or a reporter that goes to a fight. We are there to work. They are fighting for our championship.
Now, I agree with Mauricio Suleiman on that, right? He says that they are there to work. Well, work. I need you to understand that in this same interview, which I'm not going to play the entirety of, you could go see it in its entirety with him and Ariel Helwani. Look up Mauricio Suleiman and Ariel Helwani, okay, and you'll get the full interview. But he did say that The WBC is a nonprofit organization, right? So meaning that they're not profiting off of these fights. They do it for the love of boxing. Well, Ariel presses Mauricio Suleiman the way that he pressed, that money bags guy, right? That the one that Jake Shields gave a black belt to, right? He pressed him, and he asked him the same thing. What is it that you do for money? What is it that you do to sustain yourself? Well, Mauricio Suleiman has claimed that him and his family have owned businesses, pharmacies down in Mexico. Pharmacies in Mexico, okay? Classic, but okay. But no, really, he does own a real legitimate pharmacy, right? No different than CVS or what you got going on here in the United States. Obviously, just wanted to make a bit of some, pun at the fact that obviously there's a lot of drug cartels in Mexico, and this man is a drug pusher, aka pharmacist. But anyways, that is the family business that Mauricio Suleiman is in, right? So in other words, he doesn't need this, right? But then he says here, we're a nonprofit organization. We're there to work. We weren't treated correctly when we were at the Canelo Crawford fight, and as a result, this and that. And even Nick Khan said something to the fact that Mauricio Suleiman was asking for outrageous demands such as a suite hotel, right? Where in the defense of Mauricio Suleiman, he had claimed that he needs those suites because when he is there during fight week, they are not just there for a vacation. They are there to work. They are there to meet with people. They are there to set up future fights, future events, and things of that nature. But just to kind of add some context into this little clip with Mauricio Suleiman so you guys can understand.
The fight was undisputed for the 4 belts. And it was very, very, very disappointing.
Were you given a reason as
Never.
to? So how did it go? Like, hey, I want to do what we usually do, and you were told, not happening.
Not happening. No. We were given
If you're an illegal alien
to go into the fight outside of the technical zone,
Just with the regular public.
just with the regular public. Anyway, turn the page. They announce their plans and they want to change the law or introduce a new law that goes against the Muhammad Ali Act, which was a long process that Muhammad himself, with Senator McCain, Senator Reid, and others, took a long time to develop and went through the Senate and was approved, mostly to protect fighters in the United States, to have representation with their managers, to demand from the promoters full transparency and disclosure, to protect and have a wall between promoters and boxing commissions, promoters and managers, promoters and organizations, for the protection of the fighter and to reduce any possibility of any wrongdoing. The WBC has to disclose any sanction fees that are charged, any movements in the rankings. When we change a fighter, every month every year we submit a report to the ABC. And mostly it has brought the opportunity for fighters to make the most money they can make. They have the opportunity to choose between promoters and managers in a free market. So everything that is trying to be introduced.
Okay, so I'm going to play the entirety of this 4-minute clip once again, right? Just so you guys can get the full context of this, okay? Listen to this real quick.
When they announced last year that there was going to be a partnership, the WBC immediately came out and said, welcome to boxing. We hope it is good for the sport. Anything that comes into boxing, we welcome and support. And they have been changing, too aggressive, too, how do you say?
Well, I've heard you say like bullying.
Bullying.
You've used that term.
Yes, I was mistreated so bad in Las Vegas.
For Canelo Crawford.
For Canelo Crawford.
Tell me how.
Me and the other 3 organizations, WBO, WBA, IDF, we were not even given a credential. We were told we could not get into the ring. We were not allowed to go into the dressing room. We were not allowed to be at the commission desk. When we go to a fight, we go to work. It is not a vacation or a fun or like a fan or a reporter that goes to a fight. We're out there to work. They are fighting for our championships. The fight was undisputed for the 4 belts. And it was very, very, very disappointing.
Were you given a reason as
Never.
to? So how did it go? Like, hey, I want to do what we usually do, and you were told not happening.
Not happening. No, we were given a ticket to go into the fight outside of the technical zone,
Just with the regular public.
just with the regular public. Anyway, turn the page. They announced.
Brad Pitbull, shout out to you, my man. You know what? I didn't even notice your name had a pun towards Brad Pitt, right? You know, shout out to Brad Pitt. Obviously, you know, made one of the greatest movies ever, Fight Club. But yeah, you know, what's the #1 rule about Fight Club? Shh, we don't talk about Fight Club. All right, here we go.
Announce their plans and they want to change the law or introduce a new law that goes against the Muhammad Ali Act, which was a long process that Muhammad himself, with Senator McCain, Senator Reid, and others, took a long time to develop and went through in a free market. So everything that is trying to be introduced, because MMA is not, it does not have to abide by the Muhammad Ali Act. That's why the UFC controls television, sponsorship. He's the manager, the promoter, rankings, titles, everything is one universe, like the NFL, like the Major League Baseball, NBA.
This is Mauricio comparing the UFC to such, the NFL, the NBA, and things of that nature.
And the multi-billion industry walked in and had the UFC become such a huge company. On boxing, you have promoters. The organizations have nothing to do with the business side, only the promoters. And there's all these limitations that today's world brings. Around 80% of the revenue goes to the fighters and 20% to the promoters, which is very, very different from MMA.
All right, so that's Mauricio Suleiman in that, right? So going back to this Jai Apataya thing, right? While this may work in Apataya's favor, some bridges may have already been burnt. Notably, with the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman, criticized Zuffa for the way that he was treated during the Canelo Crawford fight, okay? And in boxing, critical comments can have never-ending consequences. Okay, now judging by Suleiman's hostility towards Dana White and Zuffa, there's a long way to go before these two resolve their differences. But I'm sure they can come around with a big fight and a fight that is of interest to both their organizations and their companies. So Apataya finds himself in an unfortunate situation. Vlog says, hi, hello, Vlog. Let me know what part of the world you are from. He is thrilled to watch the inside the ring, but judging by the current situation, Apataya's boxing is boxing's best kept secret. Whenever Apataya fights a war, it's more or less guaranteed, which will be an area of concern for those at the top of the division, including the 2 other world champions, Ramirez and Mikhailian, who will not want to risk their status, okay? So there's also the fact that Apataya has been prevalent on several marquee cards, often backed by Riyadh season. He is yet to break through as a name known amongst boxing casuals. So obviously, this is the project of the UFC and Zuffa right now, is to get Jai Apataya to become a household name, okay? Because fighting on Australia does not generate the money or the worldwide audience needed to bring big unification fights down under, okay? Especially when bigger financial rewards lies elsewhere in the United States and beyond the United States, okay? So Apataya is now expected to beat Glanton, okay? And the best case scenario is for the former. is for the former to dispatch the American early and become the first world champion under the ZUFFA Boxing banner. And once again, I told you their reason for that is to try and legitimize the ZUFFA belt through a real world champion. So for Apataya, he will be hoping for unifications, but if the current boxing landscape is anything to go by, he may be stalling for a little bit longer as ZUFFA attempts to find its place in a crowded space of boxing. So that right there, okay, is a reaction from the article from Matt Ashbury. Jai Apataya hits a roadblock with his latest fight announcement. And now let's get on to UFC news, okay? So who's going to be in the UFC White House card, right? Does anybody have a wild guess? Could it be Alex Pereira? We saw earlier in the chat someone saying that they are playing Alex Pereira's fights, right? In particular, they're playing the second fight with Ankalaev and him, right? And that could be indicative of a possible fight announcement that is going on. So when Jai Apataya and Glanton's ZUFFA Boxing match was announced, Dana White has also said matchmaking begins today. And that was on Tuesday of February the 10th, 2026. Today is February 11th, 2026. And as a result of that, here we are building the card for UFC's White House. And we don't know who is going to be there. They will announce later down the year, not right now, but for right now, everything is kept in secret and in basic classified for your eyes only, at least for the executives' eyes only, right? And Donald Trump, obviously, he's going to be a big forefront contributor to a lot of these matchmakings, right? He wanted Derek Lewis to be on the card, right? He has a particular interest for Derek Lewis. That's one of his favorite fighters, I assume, right? So as a result of that, Derek Lewis just lost his recent fight, and I don't know if they can, you know, just bring him in like that, but who knows, right? Who knows? Let's hear what Chael Sonnen had to say about all of this, okay? Let's hear what Chael Sonnen had to say about the White House card, because I tell you what, Chael Sonnen, this guy, he has a lot of inside information, okay? So it's kind of important to hear what he has to say, but sometimes he sensationalizes a lot of things. But all right, let's hear what he has to say here.
Matchmaker meeting for the White House card is going down right now. What do we know? Well, Ari offered something a week ago, and he said there's going to be 6 or 7 fights on the card. I was never clear when he said that if he meant the entire card as 6 or 7 fights or if he meant the main card, but this was a comment that was made. And either way, it would be something different. Okay.
Now, when they said there's only going to be 6 or 7 fights, that makes perfect sense, right? They can't possibly make the card a 13-fight traditional full card event. Why? Well, put it like this, right? What is 13 fights? We're talking about approximately 6 to 8 hours. Okay, that whole entire event is 6 to 8 hours. The White House cannot contain 6 to 8 hours of action. Maybe they can contain 3, maybe they contain 4, but that's about it, right? That is the most that they could do. So it's going to be one big main card. It's going to be one big main card, 7 fights, and that's it. Because it's sustainable for the logistics of security. It's sustainable for, well, let's just be honest about this, taxpayers' money, right? Because even though Dana White says that he is funding the whole entire thing, let's be honest, it's also part of the government's responsibility. It's also part of the government's responsibility to pay for the bills. Like, think about this, the light bills, right? The water bills, the energy bills that come with that. All of these things cost money. So they are going to be funded by the public as a result of that.
then I'm confident in telling you the most confident guy that I believe is going to fight is Michael Chandler. Who's he going to fight? I think that Benoit Saint Denis is possible. I think that a rematch with Dan Hooker is possible.
Benoit Saint Denis and ooh, that does sound good. Benoit Saint Denis versus Michael Chandler. That is pretty good. That is pretty good. I will say that is a pretty good matchup. Violence. That's what it's going to offer. If we're going to put that card together, it has to be the first fight of the night. Get the crowd going. Well, whatever crowd that may be, in the words of Brendan Schaub, the Epstein Island list, right? That is the crowd that you're going to face because you're not really fighting in front of a real MMA crowd, right? Washington, D.C., with the exception of Luke Thomas, is not an MMA town to begin with. But then again, none of these senators and all these people that Trump is going to invite, they're not real MMA people. They're not MMA people the way Trump is an MMA guy. They're just there because I'm part of the party. I'm in the Republican team. Maybe I'm part of the cabinet. Maybe I'm part of the joint chief of staff, right? One of the military generals that's not really into MMA. You would be surprised how disinterested people are in MMA, especially within the circles of Washington, D.C. But Trump is a different guy. The reason why all of this is happening is because of Trump. He is a fan of the UFC. He wants to give the UFC fans a gift for putting him back in the mainstream throughout one of his troubling times from 2022, 23, 24, and so on, right? This is Donald Trump's gift to the American fight fans. That's what's going on here.
I think there's a chance of a quick turnaround with the BMF, but I don't know how bullish I am just because that turnaround would be so quick. But I am very confident that Chandler's going to be on there. I will tell you, Alex Pereira, if you want to know the sport's biggest stars, you've got Alex Pereira and Sean O'Malley that have been battling for the top spot for 2 years now. But from what we're told, Ilia Topuria is a massive star, particularly internationally. So now that you've got the return of Ilia Topuria, it would seem as though you would use your big star over there. It would.
Ilia Topuria is definitely a shoe-in for the White House card. Definitely a shoe-in. I don't see how he's not. I don't see how he's going to fight before the White House. So more than likely, he will be fighting at the White House. Bottom line, right? Bottom line, he's definitely going to fight at the White House. There's no way that he's going to fight anywhere else, but we shall see. We shall see what they do about this, right? But more than likely, I think there's a good chance that more than likely he is going to fight at the White House. He's a champion, number one. They need to have a championship fight. He's the next guy to fill that role. So, all right, back to Chael.
I've also seen with Alex Pereira, since he's not booked, that he would be placed on.
There it is, Alex Pereira, another big name. Obviously, today they started playing Ankalaev and Alex Pereira's fight. Usually when they do that, it is indicative that there is a fight coming up or they are trying to create some sort of buzz for this athlete, right? Keep them relevant, right? Keep them in the algorithm. Alex Pereira is definitely a shoe-in. So what we got right now, two champions with no opponents or no opponents in mind that we could think of right yet. Alex Pereira, Ilia Topuria, and who else? For sure, Kayla Harrison. And let's see if Chael mentions Kayla Harrison here, because Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes were supposed to fight for the 135 title at the Paramount debut of the UFC. But let's see, right? Obviously, they're going to save that matchup for the White House. A gold medalist, American Olympian in Kayla Harrison. That would be a good theme behind it. Fighting a Brazilian. Ilia Topuria or Alex Pereira, they don't necessarily have to fight Americans, right? Because it's not America versus the world. The White House card is the UFC's gift to the world. In other words, American UFC's gift to the world. Because by the end of the day, the UFC is an American company, and it is our way of saying, hey, you know what? This is our gift to the world. The UFC is America's gift to the world. Not necessarily that we're going to put up our fighters just to prove that we are the most superior fighters in the world. Look, even if we were to have an America versus the world concept going on, right? Very similar to when they had the Riyadh season with 5-on-5 with Matchroom versus Frank Warren's Queensberry, right? Queensberry blew out Matchroom, right? Like 5-0, right? In fact, Hamza Shiraz was in that fight against Emma Williams, among other fights that were in there. Deontay Wilder was representing Matchroom, and then Weili Zhang was the Queensberry representative, and they got blown out 5-0. And even if they were to get blown out, the Americans in this White House card, it still proves that America is the top MMA country in the world. It just so happens that all of the Americans lost for this one particular night, and is not indicative of an overall statistics that you see with a win-loss ratio with Americans fighting in the UFC overall, right? So something to think about, right? Because even when Matchroom lost 5-0 against Queensberry, Matchroom is still a formidable boxing company. So something to think about. So that's why it's better that they just theme this as America. Okay, America's gift to the world is the UFC. Rather than it's our 250th birthday, let's just go piss on everybody across the world.
On that card, and I don't think we're going to see anything crazy with Alex Pereira. I don't think that we're going to get our heavyweight Alex Pereira opportunity right now. So I think that Olberg will be brought in, but there's a lot of building around that fight. Like, that is just not a hot fight. Alex Pereira has shown no interest, and Olberg has shown very little.
Yes, shout out to Ali Khan. He says, brother, you are up early. Of course, man. Whenever I am, whenever I am up early, I will try to get a stream in, or, yeah, I mean, it's a perfect opportunity, perfect timing. So just one of those things. I don't really have a specific schedule of when I go on, but when there's a perfect time, I take it. So here I am talking fights and building UFC matchmaking with you guys early in the morning in this beautiful California rain that we got going on outside.
Interest. So you're starting at ground zero, which in a matchmaker meeting is not usually where you would go. But I think that that's what's going to happen, or at least the Pereira part. I think that Sean O'Malley being on the card is very likely. I think Colby Covington being on the card is very likely.
Now, those are good names. What do they have in common? Sean O'Malley and Colby Covington, American. But once again, we're not making this America versus the world. We're just making this UFC total. Because look, it would look bad for making this, America hostile towards everybody in the world, even though realistically and in the real world, in the real military geopolitical world, that is what's going on. And then only for the American fighters to get their asses beat in front of their president? No. Obviously, it's going to be a fair fight, whether it's American or versus non-American. It's still a fight between two people, and by the end of the day, it is America that wins, with the UFC being an American company, regardless of the results between America versus non-Americans in a fight, in a UFC fight at the White House in particular, which I understand would look, by the aesthetics of it, really embarrassing, but it shouldn't be that way.
Colby has mentioned that he is now a middleweight. I don't know if he meant that. I mean, he'd actually said that.
I think that he meant that, considering of how well he did against Luke Rockhold in the RAF wrestling match, right? It showed that Colby Covington can out-grapple a lot of these big guys. Remember, Colby Covington was a multiple-time title challenger. Luke Rockhold was an actual UFC champion at a weight class above. And look how he ragdolled him in wrestling, right? So 185 would be a great move for Colby Covington, and it would give a new spark to his career, perhaps new matchups, perhaps new faces that he could take on. He says, yeah, but like isn't a wrestler. Yeah, but like isn't a wrestler. Who are you talking about? Okay, you're talking about Luke Rockhold, right? You're saying that Colby Covington should have done what he did because Luke Rockhold is not a wrestler. Is that what you're saying? He says, I agree. He should try 85, though. Okay, so you're saying that Luke is not a wrestler. Is that what you're saying? Confirm that, right? Because you're right, on paper, Luke Rockhold is not a wrestler. He didn't wrestle, well, he wrestled all throughout his high school years, right? And all American kids, you know, grew up wrestling. You and I grew up wrestling, right? There's even, well, no, not Sean O'Malley. He grew up playing different sports. But if you're an American fighter, more than likely you had bare minimum middle school wrestling, okay? Even Terrence Crawford, he's wrestled from middle school all the way to high school. And then, you know, obviously he didn't go to college, but, you know, if he did, he would have wrestled in college, but he went pro in boxing. He says, how many times have you seen Luke shoot a takedown in MMA? Because he's a tall, rangy kickboxer type of fighter, right? And he has good jiu-jitsu. He's confident in his striking, which is why you don't see him do that as often, right? You don't see Usman Nurmagomedov do that as often, only when he feels that it's so necessary. But other than that, what does Usman Nurmagomedov do? He kickboxes with people. And that is the reason why I kind of push back on your statement saying that Luke Rockhold is not a wrestler. Well, how many rounds has he wrestled with Cain Velasquez? How many rounds has he wrestled with Khabib, with Islam Makhachev, with the Magomedovs of the world, right? All the different Nurmagomedovs. He wrestles on a daily basis, right? Not necessarily, you know, wrestles in a conventional sense. But then again, listen, we saw the same event. You know who else is not a real wrestler? Armin Sarukian. How did that go with him and my buddy Lance Palmer? Lance Palmer was brought into Team Alpha Male to not only be a fighter himself, but to also be a wrestling coach. Okay, Uriah, when he brought in Lance Palmer, I remember the first day I saw Lance Palmer at Team Alpha Male. This was when Team Alpha Male was still down in I Street, right? I remember Uriah was telling Lance Palmer every time, hey, move around. You know, stay moving around. Even while you're resting, right? Move around. That's why a lot of us at Team Alpha Male has, you know, really good footwork, because that is what Uriah Faber constantly emphasizes. Move around, circle, move in angles, right? Constantly move your feet, right? Don't be flat-footed. He says, right. So he's not going to a farewell in a straight wrestling match against a lifelong wrestler. You're right. So here's the thing, Marty. Here's another thing. Who at 185 is a wrestling threat to Colby Covington other than Bo Nickel? And if him and Bo Nickel were to fight, I think Bo Nickel would probably get outstruck by Colby Covington, because they're not going to try to wrestle each other. They know that it's going to be very hard. And then Bo Nickel has a propensity of wanting to get into these kickboxing fights, right, rather than shooting in. So you're in for like an Usman versus a Colby Covington 1 type of fight, right? If you remember the first fight they had first time around in 2019. Armin is a master of sport in freestyle wrestling. Facts, he is, because he's proven that against Lance Palmer. Remember, Lance Palmer was brought in to Team Alpha Male to be a wrestling coach, and this is what happened. So just to kind of put
a wrestling event,
just to kind of put in context. All right, let's hear what Chael has to say about this, because I think it kind of goes along with what I'm saying.
where he was a middleweight. He was taking on Luke Rockhold, the middleweight champion of the world. So I never fully knew Colby met, but there is talk about Colby and Bo. There's really no other talk about Bo or about Colby, so they might find one another. If we're just...
He says now Armin is wrestling that Take Me Down for 1,000 kid. Oh, wow. Okay, there you go, man. There you go. So there's Armin Tsarukyan making waves in the world of wrestling right there, which, by the way, is great as he waits for whatever opponent or whatever possible matchup he is looking to gun for. Look, here's the strategy behind all of this, right? Is Justin going to fight Ilia Topuria at the White House? Or will it be Armin Tsarukyan? Well, here's the thing. Armin Tsarukyan has done all the work in his life to be where he's at right now, the #1 contender of the 155 division. In fact, some will say that Armin Tsarukyan is the uncrowned 155 champion of the UFC, right? Because of how badly mistreated he was after missing a fight with Islam Makhachev, which he voluntarily pulled out on. But that's neither here or there. I don't mean to digress in that. But here's the thing, right? If he wants to fight at the White House, this is his time to put in the work in campaigning in the way that he has been doing with Neon, the way that he has been doing with Aiden Ross, the way that he has been doing with all of these streamers, right? This is all brilliant. MMA Guru, all of this. This is brilliant stuff that Armin is doing. This is great. Build up your profile, man. This is great. And even to my own dislike and detriment, I would advise Armin Tsarukyan to do content with Nina Drama as well, because whether I like it or not, that right there builds your profile, okay? And especially builds your profile to the normies. Now, if I was managing any of these Muslim fighters, I would tell them, no, Nina Drama haram, Habibi, you cannot, go there. It would not be allowed under my stable, right? You know what I mean? That's what I would ill-advise, all my Muslim fighters. But if you're Armin Tsarukyan, it's okay. You are Armenian. You're not the Muslim guy. Even though you ask Ariel, are you Muslim? Oh, but you say you are from Egypt, but you're not Muslim. You are Jew. How is this? Oh, Ariel says, well, because, did you know that Egypt had Jews at one time? But either way, that's neither here or there. Shout outs to Ariel, and shout out to the Jews of Egypt, by the way, which many of you would not know that there were Jews in Egypt had Ariel not mentioned it. So imagine that, man. Ariel is Egyptian. So can you imagine? Me and Ariel are basically the same race, right? The only difference is that he is a Jewish man. But shout outs to Ariel, legend of the game, salute. No matter what political aisle you're on, no matter what religious doctrine you believe in, you are, a great staple in the world of MMA. So salutes to you on that regardless. But all right.
Just making guesses.
But yeah, that's what Armin Tsarukyan needs to do. He needs to race for promotion. He needs to continue all of these streamers, all of these things. You know what? Go on Rampage Jackson's kick stream. And if they were to bring back Raja Jackson, go do a stream with him as well. Hey, Raja, why you beat up wrestler? Why you beat these guy up? Man, it would be great content. It would be great content. But so far, man, all W's for Armin Tsarukyan and the promotional value that he is bringing to himself. This is what you do. This is what you have to do in order to make some noise. So keep doing it, and eventually they're going to put you in that White House because you're going to be undeniable and you're going to get that Ilia Topuria fight. And in fact, with that Ilia Topuria fight, I'm going to give Armin the nod on that one. So my official prediction, Ilia Topuria versus Armin Tsarukyan White House, with Armin Tsarukyan winning all 5 rounds by decision.
I think Ilia and Gaethje are likely to be your headliner. I don't think you're going to find any traction whatsoever. I don't think anybody's going to waste any effort.
And why not? Why not put Justin there? He's American. That's a net positive, obviously. But as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be Americans versus the world or anything like that. Yeah. It's America's gift to the world.
And or energy in the direction of McGregor. And McGregor shot himself in the foot a little bit, right? And just a little bit. I mean, Conor generally does everything right.
I'm going to make an official prediction right now. I have a feeling Conor may not be at the White House because of the fact that there is no pay-per-view behind the White House. And so they want to make money off of McGregor as much as they can. Now, how are you going to make money on a card that realistically is not making any money? Right? He's not making any money. The UFC is not making any money at the White House card. I promise you that. This is no more than, how do I say this? It is no different than, well, okay, if you guys have ever visited Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C., right? You know, that is where all the soldiers, all the most badass soldiers in the history of the United States gets buried in, right? In Arlington Cemetery. When you're there, there's one particular event that constantly happens, right? There's this eternal flame that they made for John F. Kennedy, right? And they have the switching of the guards, right? This is just a constant, they don't make money off of that, right? Other than the tourism, right? So that's kind of what you are going to see with a White House card. It's not for net profit or in expectation of a high ROI to come your way or anything like that. It is just basically to put on a spectacle. It is no different than, you know, having, you know, people do ceremonies. It is no different than having 4th of July celebrations, right? McGregor has blown both feet, in my opinion. Both feet. Explain what you mean. Do you mean that metaphorically, or do you mean that literally with possible injuries to his feet? If so, let me know either way.
Conor makes a move. It's generally something to study.
But the reason why it would be very difficult to put Conor McGregor into this fight is because they want to make money off of him, right? And they can't. Just like in the pandemic, during 2020, Conor McGregor wanted to fight. Why couldn't he? Because there was no crowd. They wanted him to wait. They wanted him to wait because they're like, you know what? We need you on these cards because you generate a lot of pay-per-view. My prediction is that they're going to have him fight after the White House because it's a lot more lucrative in terms of a pay-per-view. More than likely, Conor will be at the White House, but not at a capacity of fighting. He will be at the White House to promote, to say, you know what, here's my next fight incoming in July while this White House fight card is going on in June.
And try to copy it. But when Conor himself takes it back, then we can acknowledge I already got one wrong here. And Conor put out a stipulation. The stipulation was real simple. He needs to talk to R. Emanuel. Either way, he's put out a stipulation. If we're trying to build a card and we're building a card today and I have to do something, whatever that something is, that's right. I mean, every path is that of least resistance. So I just don't think there's anything there. I don't know that there was ever anything going in that direction. Islam, you know what?
Islam Makhachev. That definitely is a shoe-in. Think about this, right? He has beaten JDM, hasn't fought since. Where is he going to fight after? Well, obviously, there's Ramadan coming up in a couple of days right now. So right now, it is July 11th. We are talking about maybe 7 days from now is when Ramadan is going to be. 6 or 7 days, depending on the cycle of the moon and things of that nature. But yeah. Ramadan starts after that 1 month, okay? It's 30 days into Ramadan, so from February 18th to, let's say, March 18th or something like that. Then he's got a couple of months to get ready. He could get ready while in Ramadan, but these guys don't train as much during Ramadan, so that's that could be a factor. But either way, they can still catch up from March, April, May, and then all the way to June, right? So Islam Makhachev is definitely in there. He hasn't been scheduled yet. He has expressed that he wanted to fight there. At the same time, Khabib also said he doesn't want Islam Makhachev to fight at the White House. We don't know why. I did make a video about it, and I did explain the political reasons behind why that is. Go check out that video for you guys to get full context in that particular matter. But yeah, Islam Makhachev, if all political situations aside, I think there is a good chance that he will fight there. He is the double champion. He is a champion, and he is the 170 champion, maybe against Morales. Or maybe they'll put Morales and Islam Makhachev elsewhere in another card, in a future card that has nothing to do with this. Or maybe they'll just put it in the White House altogether. We'll see.
What would it mean? What does it mean when you've got Mackenzie Dern, you got Valentina Shevchenko, you've got Alex Pereira, you got Kazmat Chimaev? Like, what does it mean when you've got all these champions, but these are the ones that are picked? And I won't get around. I love the interim championship. I love the BMF championship. I think it provides opportunity. I'm old enough to remember when Hulk Hogan took on the Ultimate Warrior, and it was the first time ever we had a belt versus a belt, right? The Warrior's the Intercontinental Champion. The Intercontinental Champion never challenged the Heavyweight Champion. First time ever. 2 belts, 1 poster. And I still think that's hot. And that's where I believe that Ilya and Gaethje are going to get the nod and that they are going to be your main event.
He's right about that. He is right about that. Because, as I was mentioning earlier, Arman Tsarukyan needs to build his profile. And while trying to build his profile, here's Justin Gaethje with the interim belt. He has the interim belt, but Ilya has the real belt. 2 belts. I know what he's talking about. Ultimate Warrior, Intercontinental Champion, Hulk Hogan, WWE Champion. Okay? And as a result of that, it looks good on a poster. It looks sexy. It looks appealing for the fight fans. And then you put it at the White House, and then Justin Gaethje is American. But Arman Tsarukyan, this is why I say you got a lot of work to do from now till June, right? You've done all the work all your life, the physical part of being a fighter. Now it is time for you to be a promoter. That is the next phase. He says, did you see Arman training with Mighty Mouse? No, I did not. But you know what? Once again, that is great. Great content. Keep at it. This is what he needs to do. Right, next, go to England and make no, that would be bad, actually. You know, I think Comes Up would probably whoop his ass for that one. I was going to say, go to England and make a content with Tommy Robinson. Yeah, that would have been a bad idea. Tommy Robinson and Arman Tsarukyan. Bad idea for his relationship with the Muslim fighters that he trains with, but good idea for building content. And this is a Muslim guy saying this, right? Imagine Arman Tsarukyan and Tommy Robinson in the same room having a conversation. Oh, man. Listen, that's what this is all about. He needs to build content. He says you should check out the video of Mighty Mouse's channel. Inshallah, I will check that out later.
There's also the unknown, which is...
He says Arman was a super humble and willing to learn. Great, great. So now, once again, him training with a legend like Mighty Mouse, right? It builds, you know, a different character to him. Right now, he's working with he's already training with the current world champion. Now he's working with a legendary champion. By the way, a legendary champion who has a huge following, right? So now you're getting into the video gamer crowd with Neon and Sneeko and who else? Aiden Ross, all these guys that he did when he was in the streamer crowd, right? Well, now he's going into the video gamer crowd and the old school MMA crowd. And yeah, man, I think that's amazing that he did stuff with DJ. DJ has an amazing mind for MMA for sure. Makes sense that he was so successful. Facts. He was trying to show Arman that the reason he doesn't need to shoot in MMA to get takedowns. Wow, okay. Well, there you go. Now that creates a whole new different game and repertoire for Arman Tsarukyan. And not only that, building... You know what, man? Listen. Who is Arman Tsarukyan's manager, right? Whoever his manager is right now is doing a very good job. He's doing a very good job because I think... If you are Arman Tsarukyan's manager right now and you're, let's say, you know, let's say if you are an aspiring manager in MMA, right? And okay, you know how they give you math problems in school, right? Well, here's a math problem. How do you solve the problem of a boring fighter who doesn't have personality? This is the blueprint right here. Send him to Neon, send him to Aiden Ross, send him to all these streamers that have different avenues, right? He says, you think Justin Gaethje is getting to Poria for the White House? That looks more likely, right? Chael Sonnen seems to be in agreement with that. Me, I happen to think that if Armin does something that is totally outrageous to the point where we can't deny him, I'm talking throwing dollies in a bus type of attention, right? He will surpass Justin Gaethje. Get Justin Gaethje up out of there and they'll throw Armin in there. But then again, maybe they don't want to risk Ilia Topuria, or maybe they find Ilia Topuria to be a flight risk in some kind of way, right? Because he has all these problems with women and his family and all this other stuff. So yeah, Bear Jackson. Okay, so the Jackson podcast would also be good. He says, unfortunately, I think Bear had a huge part in Armin's media tour. Man, you know what? As much as I can't stand that guy, kudos to Bear. You know what? If that's the case, if Bear is the guy that's responsible to that, you know, I salute that. You know, that's what it is. Gaethje will lose bad, in my opinion, if that happens. Right, which is why I think Armin Tsarukyan is a much more competitive fight than Ilia Topuria. However, Armin Tsarukyan still needs to build his name up. And remember, you guys have to remember, there is a UFC after the White House. Could it be that they're building Armin Tsarukyan so high that when the White House card is over, they can build another pay-per-view marquee matchups? Because remember, all the profiles of these fights are only going to go up after the White House. He says more than likely standard. Yes. Yes.
Amanda, there's a large conversation going on.
Okay, so now obviously Amanda Nunes and Kayla Harrison was supposed to be for the Paramount debut. Didn't happen. Now here we are.
Because it's the White House card and because this is part of a celebration to America that you must have an American, I'm not as bullish on that idea. There will be Americans on the card, but I'm not as bullish to that. Not to mention it sets you up for failure, right? If you're bringing in the big American for the card, you run the risk that the American gets beat.
This is exactly what I just said right now, right? Let's replay back what Chael's just said right now. You bring this idea of the big bad Americans coming to fight all these foreign fighters, it will fall flat on our faces if they lose. Once again, this is why I say market it as the UFC is America's gift to the world. Okay? Because by the end of the day, you could have all the foreign champions that you want, but the UFC is an American company by the end of the day, and it is our gift to the world, regardless of how our fighters do in it.
If you're bringing in the big American for the card, you run the risk that the American gets beat. It's an interesting thing, and I just default back to Noche at Sphere, which was a love letter to the Mexican fans.
And how did the Mexican fighters do during that card? Does anyone remember?
Event did not have a Mexican athlete in it, so I don't.
Wow, and they didn't even have a Mexican athlete in it. Why? Because once again, it is Mexico's love letter via the UFC to the world. So this is America's gift to the world. The UFC is America's gift to the world.
I don't know that you have to go in that direction. I do think you're going to have Ilya.
But remember, the 5-on-5 series with Matchroom and Queensberry, they got blown out 5-0. Do you look at Eddie Hearn any less? Do you look at Matchroom fighters any less? Do you look at Deontay Wilder any less? Because he was part of Team Matchroom, which, by the way, is insane to even think about with the context of Deontay Wilder's career and how he thought Eddie Hearn was a slave master to a certain degree. But anyways.
Versus Gaethje in your main event. And I do think if Amanda can be back, that we're going to get the surprise of Amanda versus Kayla. But when you're dealing with a surgery on the neck, it's not as simple as just being willing to compete. And that could hold up Amanda. I do think you're going to get Ilya and you're going to get Piera on the same card. I think that's going to be exciting. I think that's going to be the news that comes out of this meeting.
All right, well, there it is. Nothing but wise words from the wisest man in MMA, Chael P. Sonnen, the American Gangster. By the way, I never understood why he called himself the American Gangster when he caught a court case for real estate fraud, and in all his other co-defendants, by the way, he snitched on, right? This is all on public record. Chael snitched on his whole entire co-defendants. Now, why would he call himself the American Gangster, right? Why would you name yourself after Frank Lucas? Get this. You ever saw the movie The American Gangster? What does Frank Lucas end up doing in the end? He ends up snitching on everybody. Dun, dun, dun! And the plot thickens. All right, Standard says, I don't think Trump will like having Americans take L's on the first and maybe only White House card ever. You're absolutely right about that. Trump is a sociopath, okay? He only likes winners. And this is indicative of what happened when Leon Edwards is beating the hell out of Colby Covington in front of Donald Trump, right? That was, I mean, come on, man, the worst thing ever, right? You got an Englishman beating up an American fighter in front of the president who this American fighter looks up to. Right? It was the worst idea ever to have Trump there. All right. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of go silent there for a second because I'm clip farming, you know, these live streams right here. This part I'm going to clip out and obviously make into a video specifically on the White House card. But speaking of the White House card, one person who's not interested in the White House card is none other than Sean Strickland, right? Which, by the way, he is up on February the 21st, 1 week after Valentine's, obviously. So we got Dan Ige and Costa in that card as well. Let's see here. What is this? Aiden Ross, alleged 6 million UFC deal with Dana White. Wow, okay. That's interesting. Okay, so okay, let's take a look at the Standard says Dana and the Paramount matchmakers would have to be honest with Trump about Gaethje's chances if he is looking to make that fight. Or you could just market it as America's gift to the world is a UFC. All right, so a little card rundown right here. We got Strickland versus Anthony Hernandez. By the way, little side note, me and Anthony Hernandez fought on the same card at Ultimate Reno Combat Championships back in 2012. Now here he is, possibly at a title eliminator, right? The Cain Velasquez of the 185 division, right? Some would say the Marab of the 185 division. That's indicative of his style. So in the future, yeah, we're going to do some predictions for this one. Not right now, but we're just kind of looking over what we got here. Jeff Neal in the co-main event against Urso Merdek, Dan Ige, right? The co-manager of Dominance MMA along with Ali Abdelaziz taking on Costa. Sergey Spivak taking on Ante Delija. Obviously, Ante Delija had that little eye poke controversy with Costa, the training partner of Tom Aspinall. Michelle Pereira, right? I mean, every time Michelle Pereira fights, it's always going to be a fun one, taking on Zach Reese. Chidi Nonan J-Chu taking on Carlos Leal. Look at that, man. He looks like Luis J. Gomez a little bit. Look at that picture, right? Albi Idris taking on Adi Osborne. That's always a fun fight with Adi Osborne. Nora Cornell taking on Jocelyn Edwards. That's a fun one. That's okay. It's an okay fight. These are all okay fights. Alden Carrera taking on Louis Gruley. Ramiz Bahrimaj taking on Pola Soriano. Okay. Philip Rowe My man Philip Rowe, I have him as a Facebook friend. Shout out to him. He's in this one. Jean Paul. He's taking on Jean Paul. Okay. So, Yadir Del Valle taking on Jordan Levitt. How about that? And Carly Judas and Juliana Miller. So, okay, so that right there is the card right there. He says, man, Michel Pereira is still fighting. Man moves around. I hope he's still young and springy enough to give us an unorthodox but entertaining fight. You know what? How old is Michel Pereira right now, right? So right now, Michel Pereira is 32 years old. Okay, so he's still a spring chicken. But once he gets older, right, he's going to have to figure out a way to fight, you know, that's not, you know, in that type of pace. Although, listen, you guys have seen me train. You guys have seen me work out. You guys have seen what I do, right? I still have, you know, enormous amounts of speed at 40 years old. So you can maintain it with the right balance of diet, exercise, and recovery, and things of that nature. So we'll see, right? But either way, Michel Pereira is always a fun fight. Before I go, let's talk about the Super Bowl, right? Obviously, the Super Bowl, here's something you guys have to understand, right? This is something that I learned about the Super Bowl. He says 40. I thought you were like 31. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I try to, you know, keep myself in. That's what I mean, right? Even at 40, you know, you look at some of my workout videos, you would be surprised to, you know, find that, you know, I don't look anywhere near 40 when, you know, I'm training. But on any regard, just wanted to leave off with some Super Bowl leftovers, right? So here's the thing about the Super Bowl. So the reason why they had decided to go with a Spanish-speaking crowd or a Spanish-speaking halftime show is because they wanted to expand the NFL. This is what you guys have to understand, right? Now, Bad Bunny is an international superstar, okay? And the NFL wants international superstardom. Now, the NFL is big for America. Yes, there are other people around the world that watch the NFL. For sure, they have the English watch the NFL. Some Australians watch the NFL. Some people in Asian countries and Middle Eastern countries watch the NFL, but not enough. And certainly not in Latin America, even though there is a high representation of Latinos and Hispanics in the NFL. However, it is not enough. They want more. They want an international type of crowd that you would draw up with soccer, with FIFA World Cup, and things of that nature. That is specifically what the NFL wants. So they made a business decision in bringing in a Latino singer who sings in Spanish. And as a result of that, they wanted to create a world where there is an open market for people who are not in the United States. And that was the brilliant strategy that they had along with it. And like with anything else, I need you guys to understand this, right? Let's look at this from a different perspective for those of you that are pro Bad Bunny. Imagine being a white American and everything around you is changing, right? Everything around you is changing. The demographics, especially if you're old, especially for older white people, they really have a hard time grasping this, right? Everything around them is changing. The one thing that they seek comfort in, which, by the way, is American football, the same way, because, look, I'm not a football guy. Even though I got a lot of homies that have played in the NFL, I'm not a football guy. It's just not my thing. I'm probably a casual at football at best, right? I barely watch the Super Bowl. Every year, I try to watch maybe one game, which is the Super Bowl. But other than that, I don't keep up with the whole entire season itself. So I'm not a football guy. But for others, it's a way of comfort. It is a way of bonding with their family. And that I understand. Now imagine you are a white American and you're dealing with all of that. And all of a sudden, everything changes around you, including the sport that you love. Now you got this guy rapping in Spanish. You don't understand a word that he's saying. And you feel like the whole world is caving in on you. That literally is the reason why they have resistance to this whole entire thing. Now, here's the thing, right? Nick Fuentes came out and said the Super Bowl performance really wasn't that bad. And he thought the idea of bringing Kid Rock was so corny that they just, I don't know. I mean, is it just because, you know, hip-hop country is a new thing that is going on right now? Or is it just one of those things where you know, they just felt like it's a natural resistance between left and right issues. Standard says it also doesn't help that Bad Bunny doesn't really represent the authentic Puerto Rican culture. Is that right? Okay. He feels more like an Americanized Puerto Rican superstar. Well, here's the thing, right? Puerto Rico is America. And you see these Puerto Ricans, they wave their flag around. They are way more patriotic than the actual Americans themselves. And yet, they really don't have a country to really be patriotic about because their country is America, but their identity is Puerto Rican. He says, I couldn't have told you one player in the Super Bowl, LOL. Well, that's because we're not football guys, Victory, you know, which is surprising for me to hear that from you, considering you're an Ohio guy, but, you know, we're MMA guys by the end of the day. You know, this is not our thing. It's not our world. But it is a sense of comfort for a lot of white Americans, including black Americans as well. Americans, period. And then you have this person here speaking Spanish. And here's the other dynamic of this, right? You think that all black people were supportive of Bad Bunny? No, they aren't. If you think that that is the case, man, you need to go down to South Central LA where they got black and brown, you know, banging on each other on a daily basis. So you know there's going to be some tension, some sort of anti, you know, that side rhetoric going on, right? Standard says, I agree. Not only that, the way the grass costumes were set up, it made it so that people in the stands couldn't really watch. Okay, that's an interesting point right there. So yeah, guys, I just wanted to give you a different perspective on that. You know, these were perspectives that I did not mention the last time that I did this particular episode with the Super Bowl, which I basically dedicated the whole entire stream on, right? This one was a little bit different. This one is dedicated for MMA, for boxing, for combat sports, but this one right here is just the leftovers for the Super Bowl and what had happened during that time frame. But on any regard, guys, I got about like maybe 5 minutes before I get up out of here and you know, and go on about my day as you go on about your day. Let's take a look at what else is going on in the world of combat sports. Now, it seems that Aiden Ross, here's a little bonus episode for you guys right now, our little bonus side of the stream. Aiden Ross, I believe, signs a $6 million deal with the UFC, well, specifically with Dana White. Let's read what this is all about right here. So kick streamer Aiden Ross recently told his audience that UFC CEO Dana White is allegedly paying him $6 million per year to cover UFC events on his live stream. Wow. Okay, so the claim made during January 2026 kick broadcast quickly spread across social media and the fight pages. It came shortly after Ross hinted at the deal with UFC's Paramount that it would give him access to stream every main event, including the highly anticipated UFC House card scheduled for June 14th. So going back to what I was saying about promoting Arman Tsarukyan, right? It is all deliberate that I think Dana White and Bear, okay, Bear from the Jackson podcast or whoever is affiliated with Arman Tsarukyan is pushing all of this, right? They are saying behind the scenes, hey, you know what? Here's a good idea. Let's throw him in there with Aiden Ross, with Neon, all these other guys, MMA Guru, and then we can build up his profile. So now it is very apparent that all that is deliberate, right? And why not? The UFC is not only a sports league, but TKO and the Endeavor Company is a public relations agency by the end of the day, right? They are also, you know, a law firm that sort of deals with sports management and, you know, and sports ethical laws and things of that nature. So, all right, Aiden Ross claims Dana White is paying him $6 million per year to cover the UFC. There is no independently verifiable source confirming that Aiden Ross explicitly said $6 million per year. No official confirmation from Dana White, Paramount, or Kick regarding the amount. Fan accounts and clip pages describe Aiden Ross as having revealed how much Dana White is paying him to cover UFC events, but these are not verified. So anything Aiden Ross related can't be good according to standards. Well, In terms of promotion, right? He has the name value, so business-wise, that's all that he can really offer. Is this smart marketing or desperate tactics? I think a little bit of both. I think a little bit of both. So during his stream, Ross allegedly revealed that the conversations were underway between himself and the UFC and Paramount about the partnership that would allow him to watch and react to numbered events and fight nights live on Kick. He told his viewers, cross your fingers, and described as a potential cinema, adding that he planned to bring guests like Sean Strickland, MMA guru, to each broadcast. 6 million figures surfaced around the same time, though Ross did not lay out specific terms of any signed contract on stream, but these are unlikely true. Aiden Ross and Dana White have built a close personal relationship over the years. Wow, okay. Dana White bailed Ross out of a $630,000 gambling debt in the first time they met in Vegas. Okay, met Donald Trump at UFC 314, yada, yada. Okay, so you can check out the rest of that at lowkick.com. That is all that I have for you guys right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next one, inshallah.